Yes, Elsbeth, what can I do for you today?
Well, Professor Empiricus, I'm reading Aristotle and...
Ah yes, Aristotle. A fine fellow. What are you reading?
Nicomachean ethics. And I'm having a hard time seeing how it actually relates to ethics. I'm a bit confused about practical wisdom.
Ah, yes, Nicomachean ethics. A fine work. However, you are having problems because you are not using your imagination.
My imagination?
Yes, that's right. You are thinking about his work from the standpoint of ethics today. Ethics today considers things like duties and rights. But ethics in Aristotle's day was aimed at finding the ultimate good in human life.
And what did he think was the ultimate good?
Eudaimonia, of course. Are you sure you have read it? This is often translated as happiness, and in Aristotle's case, the highest form of happiness was a life of contemplation. Oh, to live a life of contemplation. I would do that if I could.
And why can't you? You are a philosopher, right? And I think a beard and sandals would suit you.
Yes. That is often said, you know. Anyway, you have to remember who the work is aimed at. It is aimed at the rich young men of Athens, who had influence in the city. He thought that through the city-state, happiness could be achieved. So he doesn't talk about how we should live or treat others because he thought it obvious that moral principles would be held up.
So he thought that kind of thing didn't need to be spelled out.
More or less, yes. He thought that the activity of the soul expresses reason, that human good is an activity of the soul that expresses virtue, and that happiness is a virtuous action.
So we can all go out, get blind drunk, have a really good time and be happy, and that makes us virtuous. Sounds irresponsible to me.
Ah, haven't you read about his doctrine of the mean? This states that a virtue has two vices, excess and deficiency, and both hinder virtuous action. So you should avoid extremes, such as in your words, getting blind drunk.
And what about practical wisdom?
Now, that is about the ability to act. But, if you want to act well, you must know the mean, that is, you must know how to avoid excess and deficiency. And you must know what action is the best for a particular situation. You must know this, and also, you must act on it. That is why it is called practical wisdom.
And how do I get practical wisdom? Can I learn it?
Well, it comes from experience. Only a person who is good knows what it is to be good. If you have experience and deliberate by applying practical wisdom, you will act virtuously, and it is this which leads to happiness. That is why his ethics are out of your reach, because you are young and have little experience. I, on the other hand...
And how old is old enough for Aristotle?
He didn't say.
Well, seeing as people had shorter lifespans in those days, I could be old enough by now.
Good point.
So to be virtuous we need practical wisdom, but to have practical wisdom means to understand happiness and virtue, is that right? And he just assumes that people know how to live, is that right too?
Well, when you put it like that, yes, I suppose it is.
So, it's pretty useless to us in the modern world then. Why are we studying it?
No. It is not useless. Remember, your whole culture is based on the work of the great man. It all comes down to thinking for yourself, knowing your boundaries and deliberating on the best course of action when faced with an issue. That requires practical wisdom.
So the older you get, the more experience you have, and so you have more practical wisdom.
Yes, I think that is right.
So we should always listen to our elders because they have more practical wisdom?
Well, not all of them, Elsbeth. Some of them, as you know, speak a lot of rubbish. But you can listen to people like me. Now, if you don't mind, I have to exercise my practical wisdom before next class. One cannot be too caffeine and nicotine deficient if one is to be virtuous.
No. I guess not. Thank you, Professor Empiricus. If I have any more questions, I will come and see you.
Of course. I am always ready to answer your questions. Now, run along.